Welcome to footballgameplan.com, where football makes sense. I'm Emery Hunt, the czar of the playbook. Bring you an NFL Week 15 preview between the Cincinnati Bengals and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now let's take a look at some keys to victory for both teams, starting with the Bengals.
When you look at the Cincinnati Bengals in this ball game, you look at the interior offensive line. I think they could have some success versus this Eagles front. They did a great job last week versus the Dallas Cowboys running downhill. And in that Eagles wide nine defense, although they're going a little bit away from it, I think they can have some success on the interior, those defensive tackles, and that should open things up for Ben Jarvis, Green Ellis. And when you look at the passing game, you look at what they do well. They like to keep their wide receivers inside the numbers. That allows them the opportunity to get the football in their hands quickly on those quick breaking out routes, and also the ability to make one miss, which gives them the advantage versus the Eagles secondary. Now defensively, you look at Manny Lawson and the rest of that linebacking core. They're going to have to do a better job this week protecting the underneath coverage. They did a terrible job versus the Cowboys last week, and the Eagles do run a lot of those short to intermediate crossers that can confuse the defense. And on the defensive line, Carlos Dunlap and company, these guys have to make sure they keep Nick Foles bottled in. Quiet as kept, he's fairly athletic, and this is a guy they love to roll out on those waggles and boots and throw the football on the run. The defensive ends have to keep him boxed in, tackle to tackle. Now let's move over to the Eagles in this ball game, and like I mentioned before, Nick Foles has some secret athleticism, and that's why you see him in the gun on those boots and waggles and able to throw the football to those oncoming crossers that are coming on those short in routes and those drag routes across the middle. So look for guys like Jeremy Maclin, Jason Avant, Demarius Johnson running those short crossers, shallow crosses across the formation and getting yards after the catch. What they also do well is get their running backs involved in the passing game, whether it be on screen plays or option routes, and they can have some success versus that Bengals linebacking core. Defensively, it's all about matchups this week. You look at Dominic Rodgers-Cromartie going against A.J. Green. He's going to have to keep him bottled up. And Nate Allen going against Jermaine Gresham. Those are the two matchups that the Eagles have to win in the secondary in order to have a shot this week versus Cincinnati. If they can do that, they're going to force guys like Antrell Hawkins to make plays. They're going to force these other wide receivers like Marvin Jones to step up. If they can force Andy Dalton to go away from his top two targets, I think that's a win for the Eagles defense. Now, here are some of my coaching points for both teams in this matchup. When you look at the Bengals, they can't allow the Eagles to get to the edge in the running game with Bryce Brown and also with Nick Foles on those boots and waggles. You have to also take advantage of the aggressive defensive backs of Philly. These guys are susceptible to double moves and combo routes. I think the Bengals can have a chance to hit some big plays downfield, and running downhill will be key in order for the Bengals ground game to have success. Now, for Philadelphia, they have to keep Nick Foles on the move. I've mentioned it throughout the video. Fairly athletic guy that can make plays and throw well on the run. They're going to also need an encore performance from their linebackers. They did a great job last week versus Tampa by slowing down the running game. I think that was a huge reason why they won that matchup. And they also have to dominate up front offensively. If they can get their offensive line to hold that very solid defensive front of the Bengals at bay, the Eagles can definitely win this ball game. I like the Bengals in this ball game. When you look at what they do well offensively, they can run the football, and I think their offensive line matches up very well versus this defensive front of Philadelphia. And on the flanks, they love to run those layered routes out of bunch formations, and I think that right there will cause a lot of confusion in the secondary of Philadelphia. So I look for the Bengals to bounce back this week, keep their playoff hopes alive, and knock off the Philadelphia Eagles out there in Philadelphia. And I also want to give a huge shout out to Bengal fan forums and Eagle fan forums for always showing football game plan support.